Welcome to Superchargers. I'm Daniel Thomas. Let's go. G'day, guys. If you have an interest in video or podcast production, this is the episode for you. My guest is Junaid Ahmed. Junaid is the founder of Humblezone and the creator of Home Studio Mastery. With over 20 years' experience in video production, he helps podcasters and creators build optimized home studios. Junaid has authored several guides and spoken at events like Podfest. Enjoy this one, guys. Let's get into it. It sounded like in one of your other interviews, you really appreciated it sort of when the technology came out where you could not only have the camera in your pocket, but you could edit stuff on there and upload it all in one.
Oh
it
my
was
God.
like
Yeah.
the iPhone changed everything. So what's a bit of your backstory that's led you to this?
100%. So the backstory behind why I got into photography was really interesting because when I was growing up, I really wanted to be a pilot. I wanted to fly airplanes, like most kids, right? We want to fly airplanes so we can go all over the place, kind of like be a superhero. But it wasn't until my uncle, he's like, "Hey, it was Eid time, right after Ramadan, and as being a Muslim, after your uncles and your aunts, they're giving you money, like, hey, here's some money to, buy some candy or whatever." So one of my uncles were like, "Hey, for one of those dollars, I'll give you this film camera." And I was like, "Yes, here you go." Right. So bought my first film camera when I was 11 years old. And I was just so fascinated. I'm like, how do you use it? Right. So I started using this. I had it for at least 9 years. I was using that same camera, took photos of my family, my friends, we outgoing. In fact, I still have one of the last albums that I shot photos with in there. So being very tech savvy, being curious about how these things work just kept me going because not only do I get to play with tech, but I also get the immediate results of the photos that we've taken. Fast forward, my dad, he's been working for this company for 15 plus years, and in Saudi, when you're working for a company for a long time, every 5-year, 10-year anniversary, they'll give you a gift. So he got this film camera that you would put a little turning film in it, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. And now I didn't get to use it as much as my siblings did, but when the camera made it overseas, came to the U.S., I used it a bunch of times, and because I was using this camera, I also got introduced to other people that were in the film space. Now, I was working at a computer store building computers for other people, and one of the guys that came, he used to shoot um, weddings as his business, like not just shoot video but also photos. So that was really fascinating. So I would build computers for him, and he would introduce me like all the different technique and how he's bringing the footage into the computer. So again, being tech savvy, being passionate about photography and filmmaking, I'm like, following the lead and following the people that are in it, and that's what just kept me going. And it's just been a fascinating journey ever since. Now, in my book, Mastering iPhone Video Production, I specifically talk about a little bit of the story, but I'm also was blown away as the technology got even better. Like first, I was introduced to DSLR cameras in 2013, and I was like, oh my God, this is the top of the line thing that's gonna do so much more. And I was like, I need to learn everything I can do with this camera. So I took over 15 different courses on lynda.com back then. Now it's LinkedIn Learning. And, Foundation of Photography was one of them. And he taught me everything. I was like, wait, I could have used all of this technology or all of this knowledge for previous cameras as well. Because again, physics and again, the sensors and all the things that you do with the film is applicable. So that really threw me into that the community of photographers and joining meetups and meeting people who are again helping me grow into becoming a better photographer and better filmmaker.
I think this appreciation for the old school camera is such an important thing. It's awesome that the technology is here now, but
Mm.
similarly, I grew up around filmmaking and actually witnessing like my father manually splice film together, and shoots I did when I was young where they were still using like analog, and
Yeah.
doing the changing the reel with a risk of
Hmm.
like exposing it.
Yes.
This gave me a real appreciation for the craft of the cameras. It sounds like this camera you had real character to it. Like you say, that the camera itself like attracted a community or interest to you. So I think it's so valuable to have that.
Yeah.
Also embracing obviously the technology as it's moved so fast.
Yes, that definitely did. I mean, I didn't go as deep into because I was still, a teenager. I didn't go as deep as, developing my own film, although that would have been pretty cool, going on a totally different path. Because every time you're done with a film, like, okay, now I got to take it to the 1 hour film shop, right? So you drop it off, and then they would have all the tools to then develop those films. And I think he even discovered there was these scanners where you could then, put your film in it, and then it would, scan the film to a digital photo. And what's really interesting, like film, like for example, I think Quentin Tarantino still uses, film media to shoot his films
Mm.
because the quality is so much more sharper. You can actually upres past films by, rescanning all of that stuff with newer technology. So that, like, learning about those things and being able to play around with this thing was what kept me, going deeper and deeper into that. And it was just a fascinating journey.
So the I guess the home studio and the architecture of a home studio is sort of the infrastructure that knocked on from your passion for the video editing and making. So
100%.
it's not the it that would you say that built off and from it?
Yeah, it did build up from it because before the pandemic, I was helping other, helping other filmmakers, working with other people to shoot their film content. So I knew what it took to stage a scene and then shoot that scene with a camera. So I was always behind the camera. And then when I went to be in front of the camera in 2019, I was like, oh my God, this is hard. Like, how do people just start talking to a camera without even, a moment's notice? But, the questions that you're asking me is what really helps. So I wasn't asking my questions, or I wasn't asking myself questions. Hey, what am I answering in this video? So I was kind of struggling. So again, there's a lot more that goes on inside ourselves. Like the personal growth will always outpace the technology that we have that we're using. Like gear that I'm using in my studio is, a few years old, but I'm going to continue to grow and get better on camera because again, I'm putting in so much work into myself. So when the pandemic hit, I was already had the experience, I already had the gear. So when it came time to set up my own space, I was like, well, this is how I'm going to make it look. And of course, there was a lot of external motivation, external guidance for me as well. For example, with live streaming pros or Pat Flynn, watching Pat Flynn every single day on YouTube, do these live streams, and then him sharing an article, a blog post, like here's all the gear that I'm using in my space. And I'm like, okay, I have 90% of that gear, so let me start putting it all together. So initially, I just put my camera up on a tripod, and then I just set, set it up so that I was dead center in the camera, and then I started building what was in my background. So again, time after time, I just kept adding gear, kept leveling up from one stage to the next stage, and also continue to work on my ability to speak in front of the camera. through these interviews, like interviewing guests on my own podcast helped a lot.
I love that you've mentioned that because it really does just putting the camera there and talking to it. It really helps you kind of trim the fat off things and get to the point. I think it just helps you enormously as a speaker. Some people it's maybe not their preference, and that's
Yeah.
fine. But there's, as you say, there's so much self growth in just, and that's why I fully encourage anybody to just knock out small videos if that's of their interest, because at the very least, it's going to make you a better speaker, or the way you present yourself. And the same with these
Hmm.
conversations. Yeah, it's really cool, but it's also easy to see like it's like the recipe, right? Like behind you now, I see the finished, awesome background.
Yeah.
And people might jump on the video and say, wow, I can't get a background like that. But obviously, like you're saying, you've built this up over time and you've taught yourself and you've educated yourself. So it hasn't been an instant look at this.
Right. And the beautiful part is anybody can, if they want that instant look, yes, they can go to, let's say, a pre-built podcast studio to have conversations. The question is, when you go to the studio, will you have the years of work put that you put into speaking, to having the ideas, would you have all of that stuff if you walked in? So again,
Mm.
it's multiple paths. Like people who speak on stages didn't that didn't get that good on the first day, right? They had to go through a ton of training. They had to go through a ton of experience themselves. In fact, Steve Jobs was not a good speaker. He sucked at public speaking, but he took the training, he worked at it, and now when we watch his videos from back in 2007, 2010, it's just so amazing. Like, oh my god, nobody speaks like that guy yet.
It's putting in the reps.
Putting in the
Um,
reps. Yes,
so I
yes.
guess I guess in the process of somebody starting to set up a space, bit by bit, who might be a little overwhelmed by the whole thing, what would be the first step to that? Is part of it about analyzing exactly what you want to do, or is it more like I need a space that's going to be versatile for all sorts of things? What's this
Yeah.
very first step?
The first thing that you want to do is figure out what the end product would look like. And the beautiful part of that is that there's so many examples out there on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on Insta, right? You say, "Hey, I want to look just like that guy." All right, cool. You've got the look. I want to speak just like that guy. So, what are the previous steps that they go through to get to that point? What are the previous steps that they went through to get to that point? So, again, once you have that end or the goal in mind, now you can say, okay, perfect. This is the goal. Okay, what's the first thing that I need to do? Okay, let's analyze my space. Okay, in their video, I see this, this, and this. Okay, how can I match that? So again, we're copying, and then as you copy, you start to, your brain starts to making suggestions for you, because not only are you adding your flair, your personality into it, you're in motion, and that's where it becomes so much easier to do it, because once you're in motion, now you have the ability to change direction. Like it's a lot easier to steer a car when it's moving
Mm.
than when it's not moving.
Yeah, you're tweaking as you
Exactly.
go. Um, so my space here is a kind of prime example of I think what you're
Mm-hmm.
getting at, because during the so this room, it's I will have to do a video at some point of it, but essentially this room is an absolute multi-purpose room, right?
Mm-hmm.
It functions as my son's bedroom. It functions as his study, and he's got a library of children's books. It's my workspace.
Mm-hmm.
On one wall, there's an entire musical instruments to play and kind of record. There's
Nice.
also like a jungle gym, like a climbing gym. This is all within, I think it's about 12 square meter room.
Okay.
So it's the definition of a multi-purpose. Uh, but in terms of what I've done now, and I'm really happy with this setup at the moment because
Mhm.
I have a very basic camera on my laptop. It's not
Mhm.
expensive. You can probably tell. It's just a very basic one.
Mhm.
Um, but when I open the laptop, that's behind me. But then I have another camera onto a wall facing this way, which is where I
Mhm.
do castings and presentation style videos. And I
Gotcha.
have a mic here and another mic running to that wall so I can speak
Mhm.
into that mic when I'm filming there.
Mhm.
And I have this natural light source here, which I
Yeah.
like, but I lose control with the natural light. That's
Yeah.
one issue.
Yeah.
And the other classic issue, which I just think many people have, is like you have a great idea and you go to record it, even if you have like a basic setup.
Mhm.
And for me, it's leaf blowers, right? I've lived in Melbourne. I grew up in Melbourne, lived in London, now I live in Germany. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter what the country, 8 a.m. on Monday morning, leaf blower, right? And so I'll get, as you would know, you got to, you got to get your energy up and get into a certain mode to start
Mhm.
making your
Mhm.
stuff. And then you hit the record button, leaf blower out the window. So if you have a controlled space acoustically, obviously that's going to eliminate it. So how
Yeah.
important is all that control for you in terms of the lighting, the sound? Um, I think my space is a good example of a very multi-purpose space with what I have at this stage. And from
Yeah.
this point, I can just grow from there to something like what you have.
100%. I mean, I like to create multi-purpose rooms as well, right? For example, if I turn around, I have another desk here where I can assemble things, you know, dissect things, and I have a little overhead camera on top of that space as well. So again, just because I like to, I'm a father of four kids, right? So I gotta have multiple spaces so that I can, entertain them as well, and as well have space to do additional work. But ho- based on what you're explaining and what you've done, it's an amazing thing. So the first thing that you're already doing the right thing is you've got the MV7 microphone, right? And that microphone is really good for capturing serene audio, but also eliminate outside noise. Now you might hear the leaf blowers, but the microphone might not be
Mm,
listening to it,
mm.
right? So it's just a matter of, getting out of that, getting into the mindset of the microphone can't hear it. And of course, you can even test, like, hey, leaf blowers going out, I'm still talking. And there's a few tools out there that can also eliminate if there was additional sound, right? So you can absolutely do that.
That's a really important point, actually. Just because you're hearing it in your ears, it doesn't mean the equipment's picking it up. So
Yeah.
there's no reason, if you know there's no reason to get thrown by that because you've tested it out practically, you
Yeah.
can stay focused on what you're trying to do. So
Yeah.
rather than like, oh, I've got to stop and I've got to block the thing. So do you have
Mhm.
any natural light in your space closed off?
I do not have any natural light in
So
this
it's
space.
it's completely controlled space.
It's
Yeah.
completely controlled. I mean,
Yeah.
I do have two windows in front of me. They are boarded up, so you'll see a little
Uh,
sunlight coming. So they are boarded up with black thing, just so I can control the light and be shooting content here no matter what time of the day. Of course, it's harder to shoot toward the end of the day or in the evening because you can there's so much energy to go around.
yeah. That's so awesome. You can flip between the cameras there and show people directly what you're doing.
Thank
Like
you.
there's nothing to hide, right? You're like,
Right.
this is how I'm,
Yeah.
it's not a competition. It's like, this is how I get what, what I get. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
I,
So audio is definitely one of the most important things. Based on the the light sources that you have access to, one thing that I would recommend, because the right the light on your right side is more yellow versus
mm,
the light that's coming from the outside is more blue. So if you were to match those colors, that would be something that I would recommend.
that's something I've had. So this ring light here, I never know. I'm like, should I put it warm or cold?
Now,
Um,
Yeah, always want to keep it cold, basically matching the outdoor daylight.
Hmm. Hmm.
That would work. I mean, if you, I mean, you've been on film sets before, and you'll notice that they're always using the same color uh, lighting for all shoots, and then later on in post, they could opt to make it warmer, opt to make it even
Yep.
colder if they wanted to.
The classic in Germany with the natural light is it's gray a lot. It's
Hmm.
overcast a lot.
Okay, yeah. But
So
even
even
with that overcast, it's the light color is still much more cooler
Mhm,
than the warmer one.
for sure. Yeah. It's a challenge. It's a tradition on the show to have guests offer some kind of challenge.
Hmm.
I mean, obviously, we're very much talking about home studio spaces. Is there some? How do you like? How do you manage your time? Are you a very structured person with time? Is my first question, and the second is, do you have a challenge for listeners that could be anything for them to try?
Absolutely. So I live by my calendar. If it's not on my calendar, it's not happening. So if I have to drop off my kids to school, if I have to go pick them up at some time, I put everything on my calendar. So it kind of becomes my to-do list. And then both my wife and I, since we both work, we both live off of the same calendar. So that way, if she has anything, doctor's appointment or kids appointment, whatever, we put everything on calendar. So that keeps us very tight and very organized for sure. So that's something that I do, that helps me live by my day. And if somebody wants to talk to me, I would basically send them to my calendar link, like, hey, find a time that works for you, and then I'll be sure to show up because I've had the I've had a bad experience of people's, you know, they're putting or they're locking me up in my calendar, but then them not showing up. So
Mm.
I make sure that I abide by the rule of showing up on when I promise that hey, I'm going to be here at this time. So that's something that I do to be productive and to be, respectful of other people's time. So that's absolutely one of the top things. A challenge that I would like the audience to take is number one, see if there's something that you're super super passionate about and go create a video on it, right? Just talk about the thing that you love the most. Yes, it's going to be really hard at the beginning, and um, you might not know exactly what to say, but just start riffing. Now, I came up, I didn't come up with this idea because when I was taking English composition class, my teacher told me, "You just got free write." I'm like, "What do you mean free write?" Like you just gotta just write anything. I'm like, but I don't know anything. Like, yes, you do. Just talk about your day, talk about anything at all, right? And that helped me to get better at writing. Something that Gary Vee also mentioned says, just document your journey. And when he said this, when he ended the book with this, uh, crushing it, I was like, what am I going to document? What do you mean document my journey? Is my journey going from work, going from home to work, that my journey, or is this something that's very specific? And it just so happened that I had finished my beekeeping course and I was about to become a beekeeper. So I was like, okay, I can document that journey because it has a specific beginning, specific end for the class, and a specific beginning on when I'm gonna start putting these things together. So that was something that I was like, okay, I can document that. So think about something, a project that you might be working on, and then just start documenting. Maybe you can document how you make your breakfast. Like, well, first I take the eggs out, I crack them open, I like them this way. So the more you talk about things that you're already doing, the better you're going to get at speaking to the camera. And again, the more reps you put in, the better you're going to get over time.
And the key there is that passion, I think, because as long as the passion's there, I think that
Yeah.
hopefully comes through. If you're trying to sort of spruik about something you're just not passionate about, I think we all know that that doesn't really necessarily engage. I think
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot to be said for the passion. Uh,
100%.
the the issues. So when you went like on the beekeeping thing, the issue that kind of I get frustrated with these days is what, right, that's your niche, you're a beekeeper forever and you can only do videos on beekeeping, and if you veer off beekeeping, the algorithm's going to lose its beans, and it's going to squat, so this frustrates me as a multifaceted person, but I'm trying to embrace the multifaceted thing as a
Yeah.
creative. Uh, so I know that the multifaceted thing is almost like a niche in itself.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, when you're somebody, and I think we all have a lot of different passions
We do.
and
Yeah.
stuff. So I feel a bit sometimes like the niche is trying to box us a little, and I don't like that being boxed, but I understand
Yeah.
the importance of clarity and specificity.
No, I really love that question. I really love your thought on that, mainly because the niche is supposed to help build our community of people, right? What do I mean by that? When I wanted to become a beekeeper, I joined a group of beekeepers, right? I joined a community to learn from them, to grow. And then when I've leveled up, I'm like, okay, well, I'm done with that community. I'm going to go join a different community. Let's say cycling. I want to get good at cycling. I want other people who are already cycling and they're going to help me motivate. So now I join another community. So niche just means that you're bringing people along with you. So what is my niche? Well, my niche is, my personal brand on who Junaid. People might start following me on a journey when I was a beekeeper. They might start following me when I was my cycling phase. What they might follow me while I'm when I'm in my podcasting phase. So again, these are different phases, and as human beings, we continue to grow. That's why we have so many different hobbies, because you're taking something from that hobby and then you're applying it to another aspect of something new that you might be learning.
So it's okay to evolve is the point. It's like
Yeah,
if people are along
absolutely.
with you and they're like, oh, I enjoyed the beekeeping stuff and now he's on this, they'll be like, well, I know how this guy sort of presents his stuff. So I'll
Yeah,
even though he's cycling, I'll go on that ride as well. That's reassuring to hear because I think I get a
yeah.
bit stuck in my head of like I can only stay in that lane, or and
Hmm.
I think once you start sort of trying to cater for that,
Yeah.
you can lose that ability to evolve and experiment, and I don't think you should perhaps try and please the robotic kind of
Yeah, you
as
want,
much
as
as
long as you're,
understanding it. Yeah.
no, you're absolutely right. As long as you're happy in the stage that you're in, people are going to find ways to connect with you, and because they are attracted to that happiness. They're attracted to the curiosity. They're attracted to the passion that you bring in, right? For example, you've done a few films. You're featured in some short films. I want to go actually check those out. But what's beautiful is, as filmmaker, you might start out as a producer. You might start out as a filmmaker or a camera, somebody who's holding the camera. But as you're going through that journey, you might be helping others. Like, hey, I'll be the gaffer and I'll hold the mic while you shoot, right? I'll do this other thing. So you're become multifaceted because you're you're doing thing that's related. And we
And
know
out of
so many,
necessity. Yeah.
out of necessity too, right? And we've known so many people who started out as directors and then they became actors, or they started out as directors and now they're producing, and they have their producer credit and whatnot. And that just goes to show that you don't need to be locked in one specific space.
The
A
beauty, the
recent
Yep, sorry, go on.
No, absolutely. The beau- Recently
Yeah.
I finished reading the book by uh, Arnold Schwarzenegger, right?
Oh, yeah.
The is called Be Useful. And I didn't know that he had already built a real estate business before he got into acting, which gave him a lot of leverage to pick exactly which roles he wanted. He didn't have to pick the small roles, right? He's like, no, anytime I'm going to be in the film, I'm going to be the leading character in the film. So again, having those multifaceted uh, expertise and having a solid foundation in income generation or financial stability also gives you a lot more authority in getting to pick what you want to do.
That's it is exactly what you said. The beauty of filmmaking is when you do these different roles, whether you're part of the crew or you're in front of or whatever it may be, you get this awesome different perspective and you just
Yeah,
filling this toolbox all the time. Like if you like you say, if you just hold the mic for one day, you learn stuff about acting. And then when you're acting, you're watching the mic guy. You learn stuff about that. That's the beauty. That's what I love about the filmmaking. Is there's just so many pieces to the puzzle, and everybody's like bringing their thing. But you can um, learn so much from all those parts. But it all falls under storytelling. Um,
100%.
and so yeah, that's what's very cool about the multifaceted thing. But just to bring it home, just to touch on so you believe that video is a huge has huge potential in terms of personal branding. We've already touched on, just start making videos perhaps about the things you're passionate about. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, getting to that personal brand video has an enormous capacity.
I do believe that video is a really powerful platform. Not just video, but podcasting alone is a very powerful platform to personally grow or in personal development. Why? Because it's very similar to journaling. It's right there in line with journaling. And a lot of the times when you're working with coaches, they'll ask you to journal. They'll ask you to write down what did you learn today? What are the three key takeaways from today, at the end of the night? And then decide what you're going to do tomorrow. So just like that, I think video and podcasting enables you to do that because you're literally documenting the journey. You're literally documenting what you did today and the conversations that you're having and what did you learn from that. And as you grow that and as you expand on that, it just helps you land so much better in people's minds because you've polished that ability to speak. You've polished that ability to concisely say the thing that you are passionate about. And the more you do it, the better you get at it.
Mm.
I think it
Again,
was,
it's those reps.
yes, again, doing those reps, right? And it's amazing to see the people who do a ton of reps and how far they've gone. For example, we have examples from Michael Jordan. We have examples from, Michael Jackson, the singer, all the people who are in the performing arts or performing sports. They didn't just get there waking, waking up in the middle of the day and like, hey, I'm going to do this. No, they've been doing it for a very long, long time.
Again, it's that end product thing. We see the end product and think it was made overnight, but there's
Yeah,
10, 20, 30 years behind that. So
100%. Yeah.
you have a couple of shows. You have one which is awesome because it has that element of hobbies and how you can take those hobbies into like what we've been talking about. Where can
Yeah.
people find your shows? You also have a course and your book.
100%. So the the podcast is called Hacks and Hobbies: Passion to Profit Stories that I've been running for the past 6 years. Interviewed over 500 guests, and that's what enabled me to become the storyteller that I am today. Right. I also have a YouTube channel where I teach people how to use software, how to use technology, and make it really simple for them to understand, so they can, uh, watch and learn and implement it. And then the book that I recently published, Seven Stages of Home Studio Evolution, is available on Amazon. That anybody can go and grab a copy. And the course and some challenges that I also have, like you like challenges. I have a 30-day video challenge, which helps people get comfortable in front of the camera. I send out a prompt every single day, and they take that prompt, answer that question in a video form, and then they can either share it in the community or just reply back with an email, hey, I did this video, here's how I felt, blah blah blah. So again, that's a 30-day challenge. And then I also have a 5-day home studio rehab challenge, which helps them understand all the different things that they need to be thinking about when setting up their studio space. And of course, like you mentioned, I have a 8-week course as well that helps them walk through and build out their studio.
I love that one about getting comfortable in front of the camera because it is a weird thing. I just remember the first time I did a filmmaking course, it was at the New York Film Academy, but it was in Italy.
Nice.
But it was awesome. It was my first time doing like acting for a week, and there was a lot of
Yeah.
just basic, acting for the camera and stuff a long time ago. This is the first thing they got us to do. They're like, okay, just get in front of the camera and you can
Hmm.
basically do anything you like, because you just tell us something, like just speak for a little bit about whatever you like. And I thought I would be extremely clever. And I thought I'm going to be so like sort of clever here and I'm going to stand in front of the camera and say nothing. And it was just, so everyone's standing around. I'm really clever here because I'm just not going to say anything. And then they cut it and they're like, okay, fair enough, but perhaps on the next one you can just give us like something, like
Hmm.
just. And then the next one, I stripped all that away, and I actually, when I arrived in Florence, I was really taken aback by the architecture. Actually, I was really like,
Mm.
I went to the Duomo, and the statue of the artists was sitting above the statues of the gods.
Wow.
And for me, who'd come to Europe as sort of an artist, it was really confronting for me because I was like, wow, in Europe here, like the artists were up so high. So anyway, I spoke about that, and I think that was
Mm.
far more interesting than me trying to be clever and whatever, because I just talked about an experience that I
Yeah.
really but this was a long time ago, and it was,
Yeah.
as you say, it was, I needed to get that stuff out.
Yes. You gotta get all the stuff out so that the good stuff can come, you know. The only way to wash dishes is to by running clean water through them. You can't just you can't just hope that the dish will get clean by itself. You got to actually put new stuff into it. And that's what we're trying to do with our brains by putting in good stuff and getting out all the bad stuff. And
Mm.
that all comes through practicing speaking, practicing talking, practicing just getting, even even if it's a venting session, right? Every once in a while, you hang out with your friends, you just venting everything out. Well, that's essentially what you're doing by clearing your mind and putting down on paper, or just have more room in your brain to actually do some critical work.
It's the room in the brain is cool, and you touched on it earlier. Like, don't be worried about the if you have the space can set up nicely. You can, the more you can free yourself to have that
Yes.
clarity there is, and all this infrastructure. So awesome that you're teaching people how to set this up, because it's that infrastructure that will give you the tools you need to then be able
Yeah.
to hopefully express that message or whatever it may be. So
Absolutely.
yeah, very cool. Well, I really appreciate your time. We've covered quite a bit. Is there anything we haven't covered that you'd like to address?
No, man, this was really good. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
There you go, guys. Honest ratings for the show on Apple are appreciated. If you have a guest suggestion, please feel free to reach out on my website at danielthomas.co. I'm also on social media at Mr. Dan Thomas. Catch you on the next episode.